You're listening to episode 129, where you'll be meeting Sara Jones. Canadian-born with Welsh heritage, living in Australia, she's deeply connected to the land and its traditional owners, and utterly committed to helping others live in harmony with themselves and the environment. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Well, hello there and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela. It's wonderful to have your ears here with me today as we dive into another fabulous conversation with a wholehearted businesswoman. And this, of course, is to celebrate the release of my new book, Your Next Chapter, Ditch Your Doubt, Own Your Worth, and Build the Business You Really Want. Now, the emphasis there is on the really, because the wonderful women I've been speaking with have all felt that calling to move into something that is more aligned with the woman they have become, which feels more purposeful, which feels as though it allows you to make that contribution, experience the fulfillment, and enjoy the financial reward from the difference that we make in the world. And so the lovely Sara Jones, who I'm speaking with today, has a fabulous story of how she has moved into a path of work which really aligns with her heart. There is so much thought and so much energy behind the work that she is doing with her life partner, Jamie Malu Thomas, and I'm hugely excited to be able to bring this conversation to us today. So thank you, Sara, for joining us. And I know there is a very special way in which you like to begin these type of conversations. So I'm going to hand straight over to you for that ceremonial part before we then dive into the background.
Yeah, thanks for that, Angela, and thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of the podcast today. And yes, I like to always acknowledge country when I begin anything or at the beginning of any meeting. So if I can just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today, which is the Wathaurong people of the Kulin Nations down here in Bacchus Marsh, in Darley in Melbourne, Victoria. And I'd like to also extend that to the lands, the traditional custodians of the lands that you're on, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and to thank the traditional custodians of this land for the amazing way that they've taken care of the land for such a long, long time, so that we have all been able to benefit from it. And we like to extend that to thanking the contemporary custodians that are continuing to look after the land today.
Thank you. I love the feeling of groundedness that gives to a conversation, that taking the time to mark that respect, it just brings a different tone to the sort of conversation that we're having as well. So I really appreciate you introducing us in that way.
No worries. I think it is really important that we're always acknowledging the earth that we stand on, and the traditional custodians that have looked after it for such a long time, as well as, you know, how that we interact with that earth every single day.
And we do. And it's actually pausing and taking that notice. I think I don't want to use the expression, but I can't come up with a better one just off the top of my head of, I don't want to take our world for granted, but sometimes we can. And the busyness of just everyday life and just getting on with things, it's rare to actually pause and have that deep sense of appreciation. But I know from reading the background story that there is something that happened with you and this sudden dawning, or not sudden, probably this gradual realization that there was more available to you in the way that you wanted to show up in the world. And this came to the Wayapa Wuurrk, which you're doing now. Could you give us some of those previous chapters so we can get an understanding of before we find out really truly about the work you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it has been a gradual. I guess it started when I'm actually Canadian born. I've got Welsh heritage, and my family moved over here when I was 14 to Australia, and I've been lucky enough to be living in this country since then. And I started working within the Aboriginal community way back in 2003. And that was such an eye-opener for me, to be exploring, finding out about the richness of culture that we have here in this country, that is one of the world's oldest continuing cultures, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we are so lucky, and we don't cherish that enough or celebrate it enough. And so when I started working within the Aboriginal community, it just gave me an understanding and an awareness that connection to country, to the earth, to everything around them, that they reverenced, and it always came first, that connection to country. And I started learning about it, and it was a journey that I started working in business development and marketing at the Curry Heritage Trust, which was a cultural centre celebrating Southeastern Aboriginal culture that was based in Melbourne. And I moved on then to doing looking at Indigenous foods with another partner of mine, and then went to the top end, to Darwin, and started working within an Indigenous employment program with helping to mentor and get long-term unemployed Aboriginal people into childcare and aged care traineeships. So all along this time, I was, really just falling in love with culture and the people. And then it was a matter of coming back to Melbourne in 2013 and reconnecting with my now partner, Jamie. And it was he that showed me this amazing practice that we later named Wayapa Wuurrk, which is all about understanding earth mindfulness and taking the time to really cherish it and give it the respect that it needs with our connection to the earth. So while it's been, I guess, really a journey since 2003.
And I could feel and hear that deepening of the respect. As you said, I've been falling in love with the culture, and that speaks volumes about what you've experienced. And then to take it to the next level with this sort of, is practice the right word to use in association with what Wayapa Wuurrk is? Can you dig down into that for us?
It's really not, because it really is a lifestyle.
Okay.
Because it really impacts on everything we do, our every daily interaction with our environment. It is about that connection. It is about deepening or reactivating our reciprocal relationship with our environment, because we've got this concept in our heads that we are somehow separate from the environment. And yet we breathe air every day, we drink water, we, interact with the land, every single day, eating the food every day. So we are very much a part of nature. Yet we've, got this very strange concept of being disconnected from it. So we talk about really reactivating our reciprocal relationship with the earth. And that means that the earth sustains us. So it is really important that we look after the earth, we give back to her and our environment to make sure that what she's giving us is healthy, and we're totally responsible for that.
Where do you think that the concept of being separate, of like that we don't honor or really understand, or is it appreciate that we are not separate, that we are so connected? Where do you think that disconnection has come from?
Yeah, I think we've moved away from, I guess, survival mode. So in Wayapa, we talk about the fact that, we honor the ancient ways of Indigenous people, particularly here in Australia, but all over the world, that lived in harmony with their environment because they needed to. They needed to know how to survive, and that was very much based on living observing all the cycles and the seasons and knowing everything about the environment that they were immersed in for their very survival, but also to thrive. And so every single one of us who is living on this planet has descendancy that can be traced all the way back to hunters and gatherers. And that we all lived that way, living in, sort of needing to, live off the land. And it wasn't until, I guess, we started disconnecting from that and starting to move into, cities or into, agriculture, rather than hunting and gathering, that we started that disconnection process that just kept continuing more and more and more as modern society grew. And, we felt that disconnection more and more. And we started not knowing where our food came from, not thinking about, what we need, where water was coming from, and the fact that water is, billions of years old. And so, and it's the same water that our ancestors drank. So, we're in a terrarium in this planet. So it's, cycling all the time. So we need to take care of that water because that's the water our kids and grandkids and their grandkids are going to be drinking. So I guess it's really about immersing ourselves in those ancient ways of what they used to know.
And it feels as, I love that expression, that we're in a terrarium. I've got one of those just upstairs, but now you've just given it a whole new flavour of looking at it in that way. So, I mean, there is so much discussion about climate change. And I watched just recently the David Attenborough movie that was quite disheartening when I saw the damage. I mean, you sort of have this idea that we're not doing a great job, but then when it was actually played out right in front by someone who, I grew up with this man's voice in my ears, and he, from when I was a little kid, I saw him on TV, and so it just gave it real gravitas when I was listening to him. But he did end it with hope, with the things that we can do. So this appreciation for the connection that we have, the desire for the need for harmony, has been heightened, I believe, in the climate change scenario. But it's not just that with what you're talking about, is it? There is like that that has a. It sort of has a connection to it, but it feels deeper than that as well with the work that you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a relationship. It's really understanding our relationship with the environment and everything in it. And that, as I said, that relationship's reciprocal. So it's mutual. So it's for our well-being, own well-being. And we talk about in Wayapa as earth, mind, body, spirit well-being. A lot of the time in the wellness industry, they only just focus on mind, body, spirit. And that, a lot of the time it's reverencing universal energy, but it's actually the earth that sustains us in this body, in this life. So that's why ancient people always reference the earth coming first, because they understood that it sustained us. So that is why we always talk about it in that order. And why we need to understand that that's our relationship. And so in taking accountability or responsibility for that relationship of making sure that we do everything we can to look after the earth. And we're very much around encouraging and empowering people, inspiring people. So, because a lot of the time people do feel so overwhelmed with the doom and the gloom that they often get paralyzed and feel like there's nothing that they can do. But we know that there is, because we know that even one of the lessons that Mother Earth has been teaching us through this global pandemic is that when we take time to pause, things regenerate, and that is connection that regenerates. It is the land, it is the air, it's the waterways. We've seen all of those amazing pictures, of all of the places in the world that have regenerated so quickly. So that does give us hope that when we are really conscious and aware, and we talk about being earth mindful, that we can actually encourage that and we can be a part of that and contribute to it, which gives us purpose. So we can wake up every day and we can have gratitude. We wake up and we do our Wayapa practice every day, which is an embodiment practice of gratitude for the earth and everything that she gives us. but that also transpires into action. So daily action of looking after the earth. And that might be as simple as things like, carrying around a backpack that has a water bottle, that has, bamboo cutlery, that has, stainless steel straw, that has shopping bag, reusable shopping bags, all of those things that are trying to limit single-use plastic. Or it could be being, really ethically conscious when you're buying things. We always say, you can put this simple process into place of saying, do I need it when you come to buy something? And most of the time we don't need things. We just want them. And so we go, okay, well, if we want it, why do we want it? And spending some time with thinking, is that ego-based or is that a real need through that we need something? And then thinking, how can we source that? Is it ethically sourced? Are people being paid properly? Is it, making sure that there's, it's coming in the best possible way, that we're making that purchase, and then thinking, where is it going to go when we pass away? Because a lot of the times we stop at that spot of, okay, ethical choice. But then when you go that next step of saying, okay, but where is it going to go when I pass away? Then that actually really brings it into an understanding of that then is passed on to the next generation. And I think with Indigenous people, they've always been so conscious of intergenerational well-being, of what happens, what is the earth that we're passing on to our children? What are they going to be inheriting? So, and personally, I've gone through this practice last year because my dad passed away. And I had the task of having to deal with their house, and everything that was in it. So it really hit me hard as to, bringing that last step in of thinking, okay, well, when I make this purchase, what is going to happen to it after I die?
I hope you're enjoying this conversation and perhaps it's inspiring you to start your own next chapter. Don't forget to pop over to my website where you can order a copy of my book, Your Next Chapter, Ditch Your Doubt, Own Your Worth and Build the Business You Really Want. In it, I'll take you through the next chapter change cycle that will help you develop the clarity and confidence to move into this next stage of your business and life. Just go to angelarasmus.com/Your Next Chapter book. That is a game changer, Sarah. I'm just sitting here going, oh my goodness. I'd never thought of that. Like when my husband and I were watching that movie, and I have a really good friend down in Melbourne who is always talking about the importance of making good choices, mindful choices, and that ethical sourcing. There's another wonderful woman that I've interviewed, Harjit, on the podcast as well, who's talking about the sustainable clothing and the ethically sourced materials. But I hadn't thought of that next step. And where does it all go? Like if I'm not here, that just puts a totally different spin on it. It really does.
I know. And it did for me too. And it really hit home for me. And I'd been, we'd been practicing Wayapa for, 5-6 years at that stage. And it really hit home for me when I started. I was like, yeah, this is really something we need to talk about, is what's going to happen to it after we die. Because, I was left with, a big house to work through all of this stuff. And things like, I used to, I traveled, and I would buy souvenirs from every single place because, that's my memory, And then here I've got a zillion souvenirs that my mom and dad have collected over the years to deal with. And there's not many places that will accept those sorts of souvenirs.
I'm thinking the spoon collection.
I know. There's so many things that you just don't even really think about consciously. And it's like, and that just, it really did wake me up to those sorts of things. But also, one of the really, really, really important things that we talk about in Wayapa is that we are a non-judging modality. So we don't judge people's journeys. It is a journey. It is a process. So we don't hold ourselves up as the benchmark. We hold ourselves up as we are continually improving ourselves, and that's all we ask for people to do is to do the best that they can. So, what is the best for me might not be the best for somebody else who's in an entirely different situation. And it's, there's way too much judgment in the world as it is. So we think that by empowering and inspiring people to just be mindful of their daily interaction is a lot more positive, and it will encourage people to do a lot more of going, okay, well, what can I do? Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. I'm a Jones. Don't, care about keeping up with me. Just do whatever is, do as much as you can do personally yourself.
That actually delivers a whole lot of grace. That space that you have around that gives that grace to allow people to do the best that they can in any given moment, with always an eye on improving, but not on some sort of timeline. It's similar in the recovery movement that I'm a part of. We talk about that it's progress, not perfection. And it's letting go of that judgment, letting go of the expectations of how things must and should look. I think our self-imposed deadlines can contribute to that paralysis. It's like, well, I'm not doing a very good job, so I just won't try at all. And that's the antithesis of the mindful approach that you're talking about. It sounds lovely. Well, actually, before you said that, Wayapa Wuurk is a lifestyle, and I'm understanding that as I hear you talk about it. But you also mentioned about the fact that you have a morning practice, and it's been my experience. I'm really interested to hear of what that practice entails, because in a different vein, but a similar vein, I have a concept which I talk about in the book, which is having the bookends of your day, how you start your day, how you end your day. It really sets you up in a certain mindfulness, a mindset, a way of being that improves the likelihood of you having a positive impact on the world, on your own world and on the world of those that you come across during your everyday. So could you talk to us about what the practice looks like? And then I'd love to hear about how people can get involved as practitioners.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Wayapa practice is we call it, I guess it's, the new buzzword is embodiment, which I really like, because it is about embodying the landscape or embodying the environment. So we have the Wayapa practice is based on a story, because ancient cultures always use storytelling as a beautiful way of conveying messages. And my partner, Jamie, is one of the best storytellers ever. So he, created this Wayapa and the 14 elements, which is based on, I guess, the cycle of life. It's actually, we start the Wayapa practice with honoring the creator, and whatever creator that is for you. And it goes through 14 movements, which include, we start with the creator, then we go to the sun, the moon, the land or the earth. We then go into lightning. We go to, sorry, I'm having a mental blank. We go into into rain, into wind, into the tree. Then we talk about the air element, the land element, the water element, and then hunter, gatherer, and child.
Wow.
Which ends with the child, because the child is also the creator of the future, the creator of their world. So and each one of those elements has a sequence of movements within those elements. So it takes you about a minimum of 10, 12 minutes to do the practice if you're doing it really fast. But otherwise, it's about 20, 25 minutes if you're doing it slowly and mindfully. And those elements are all really about paying gratitude to how we connect with each of those elements, for what each element does for us in sustaining us in this life, and also paying, what our personal interaction is with those elements, and also then you can also add in any, sort of cultural layers that you might add. So and Jamie might add his Gunai Krunai story for the sun into when he's thinking of the sun element. Or, if you're Gaelic, you might add in some stories around the sun, or if you're, Italian, you might add in a story around the element. So it really is it's more 3 layers, with Wayapa, and it's about deepening your connection, to each of those elements all the time. And we start that practice every morning with that practice, so that we're feeling connected and full of gratitude, for what we begin every day with.
I was, as you were describing them, and I could sort of see, I'm waving my hands around right now. You can't see it because we don't have video on, but there was this feeling of, again, the word that comes up for me is grace. When you were talking before about the roominess of the definition and then the gracefulness of the movements. And we can start the day connected and in gratitude. That's got to be a better place to start the day rather than scrolling Facebook, for example.
Absolutely. And if, when you start the day that way, full of gratitude for what you're actually, just everything that sustains you, it's really hard to start the day in a bad mood. So it's a great way to start the day. And then we do and because we're practicing Wayapa and everything we do every day, we also then usually use the Wayapa visualization at the end of the night as well, when we're sleeping, to feel gratitude for the day.
Beautiful. So that's, an example of what I would call the bookends of the day, the way you start, the way you end. What I'm interested in hearing from you is, I'm a big believer in whatever it is that we are creating in our business, we need to stand for something bigger than what it is that we sell. Like, it's part of a bigger story, to pick up on that theme that you had before. For me, the story is about reconnection to self-worth. And when you have a connection, a deep anchoring in your own worth without questioning it from an external sense, I believe that these concepts that we're talking about here are related. You have to have that connection to self to then be able to turn around and appreciate yourself, then appreciate the earth, appreciate others. It has this, to me, a sort of waves to it. So even though I'm a marketing and business strategist by trade, so to speak, the layer that sits underneath it is the self-worth. Without that, you can have all the strategies in the world, they ain't gonna stick. So if I'm hearing what I'm getting from you is this idea of standing for something bigger than what it is that you sell, so to speak. How would you define that with Wayapa? It's like the legacy that we're doing here. How do you bring that out into the world? You've spoken about your personal practice, but how does that then have a more far-reaching impact? How do you deliver this work to the world?
I totally agree with you. I think that it's been a big journey, because when I reconnected with Jamie, I ended another abusive relationship, and it had been 20 years of making really bad choices, and a lot of that was around my own self-worth. And I also had a really big struggle with alcohol for a long time. I started using alcohol when I was 14 to start numbing the pain that I had of not fitting in. I just didn't ever feel like I belonged anywhere, and that continued throughout my entire life. It wasn't until later on when I did the practice of breath work, and which includes a rebirthing process, that I was able to bring up suppressed memories of being sexually abused as a child by a relative, that, I started being able to piece together some of the puzzle of my life. But it was really when I started, I guess when I met Jamie and he showed me Wayapa, it was something that I immediately, it was like this massive download into my soul, into every one of my, cells, of remembering of who I was, and that connection. And I had done so many different modalities up until that stage, constantly looking, trying to find something. And while they were all fantastic for their own, benefits, I was still had that really deep within my core, felt this void inside me. And I was just like, no matter what. So I'd use alcohol as a way of numbing that void and of not feeling enough. And when Jamie showed me Wayapa, it was like, oh my God, that is it. That is what I've been missing. It is my relationship with the environment, of knowing that I actually belong to Mother Earth. I am her child, first and foremost. And that relationship is something I've had since I was born. And it is what I will continue throughout my life. It is the longest relationship I'll ever have. And it is when I'll go back to her. And so when I understood that I was never ever alone, that I was actually always had Mother Earth and she would always hold space for me, that helped me so much. And I was able to really get accountable for myself and say, okay, how am I contributing to, what am I creating in my life here, and how am I contributing to it? And alcohol was definitely a massive issue for me. And I stopped drinking for 5 years as a result. And it was a huge turning point for me of getting accountable and having Mother Earth hold me in that space of non-judgment, of total acceptance, total love, that I could then start feeling for myself. And that was really important. And I guess that's why when we started sharing Wayapa, I just, and Jamie showed it to me, I was just like, we have to share this with the world. This is so important to give this connection, this feeling of connection to as many people as possible. And that's when we set about actually, getting it certified as a modality, structuring it up so we could get insurance, and then also creating it so that we're an approved training provider with the International Institute for Complementary Therapists, so that we could actually start training other people to become certified practitioners to go out and share Wayapa as well. And we're sharing it, from 3-year-olds all the way to 100 plus, from childcare centers and schools to individuals, to women's circles, to we've got Wayapa happening in 3 prisons down here in Victoria. We've got, share it in hospitals. We share it, people who are, of varied abilities. It's such an inclusive practice. Anybody can do it. So it is, and to create that sense of belonging, which then creates purpose in your life to want to look after the world and to, be a part of the global village, is something that I am so grateful every day to have been gifted, this purpose in my life with Jamie. Sorry, that was very, very long-winded.
Oh no, length it does not matter when you can communicate such congruence between who you are, what you do, and the gift that you're giving to the world. That to me is the epitome of a next chapter. You spoke often about embodiment, like that this is an embodiment practice. Yes. But you, as the person who is taking this out to the world with Jamie, you're embodying what it is, your message. You're embodying your message. It's not just a message from the head. It's a message from the full body. And that's the difference. This is the thing that I really want people to understand. You mentioned that you tried so many modalities, but then you heard this one and you recognized this one and you felt this one really through every fiber of your being, that this is the one. Yeah. And I hear so often with people who are thinking about, moving into the next chapter of their life and starting to share their message, share their experience, start this business, change this business. And I hear, but it's been done before. There's so many people doing this, but there isn't. There are so many people who may have heard 100 different business, coaches, for example, and then they hear me and they go, I recognize it. There's somebody that could have been to, a dozen different therapists, but then they find the one and that connection is there. So it's so important for people not to discount the value of their particular experience. And just the other, I see you and I hear you so clearly because my journey is so damn similar to yours. 14 is when I started numbing myself with alcohol because I didn't belong anywhere. And it took me until 37 to realize that I belong to me and to a bigger purpose. And I don't drink, haven't drank for almost 14 years now. So it changes everything when you're able to, if you're stuck in a place where you are numbing who you are because you think you're not enough, once you can flick that switch and connect to that deep sense of self-worth, everything changes. So I'm with you 100%. Absolutely.
Yes. Unfortunately, it took me until 45, but anyway, better late than never, I say.
Exactly. It happens. And this is it, the recognition of the modality or the bridge from where you are to where you want to be. There isn't a timetable. Just when it happens, we embrace it, we're ready for it, and suddenly we can shine. We can, as you said, you've got that sense of purpose of life, of contribution. And that, to me, is what this is all about. And it doesn't mean that our contribution has to change the entire world. It can just change the corner of the world that we're in. It can just change our world. But it's so important. So, I appreciate your openness, because this is it. It's the power of example. Someone will be listening to our conversation right now, and it is going to act as the catalyst for them. And our work is done. If we can catalyze, a single individual, because it's then the ripple effect. Because your awakening through Jamie has suddenly had this ripple effect that has got out to practitioners who are then rippling out to other people. It's invisible impact, but it's happening. And that makes me feel delighted.
Oh, and that's so true. And that's the beautiful thing about Wayapa as well, because it is such a personal journey. You have to have it as a personal journey as your starting point, and then you go out and share it.